Today, sensible governance prevailed in the city of Cape Town when the DA passed 4 important bylaws with the majority of council. The ANC and EFF, who serve on the Safety and Security Portfolio Committee and who had not opposed these bylaws when they were passed through the committee, chose today to showboat and grandstand for the media. Despite this dishonest behaviour by the ANC and EFF and their social justice partners, cool governance and sensibility prevailed in the City Council when the DA and the majority of the Council passed the 4 bylaws, ensuring that while we on the one hand support homeless people by offering social development opportunities and shelter, we also ensure that our public open spaces remain viable and sustainable, and that we can continue to attract economic development and employment to our city.
The situation is that we looked very carefully at these bylaws, and I want to commend Councillor Ngqabashe and his portfolio committee, DA and ANC and other councillors on that portfolio committee. They worked very hard on these 4 bylaws that we are considering today, and a huge amount of effort, thinking, tweaking and reconsideration went into them. That was not a matter of just trying to get the bylaws through. Some of these are on the offing for 4 years. So an incredible amount of consideration and careful thought has gone into them, attempts to ensure that they are the most legally compliant and constitutional bylaws that we can make. We've taken, even at this late stage, further senior legal and constitutional legal advice on the matter. So when you compare our bylaws to that of eThekwini, Tshwane, Johannesburg, and so forth, you will see that the bylaws are substantially more progressive than in those municipalities. And we've looked at this very carefully. This amendment that Councillor Ngqabashe now is proposing is specifically to ensure to Councillor Dudley that homelessness in and of itself is not criminalized, that a person is given an offer of alternative accommodation, and in the decline of that offer, then only can we take further steps. Because inasmuch as we have an obligation to ensure that we support homeless and vulnerable people, we have an equivalent obligation to make sure that our public spaces remain sustainable and workable, and that the structures going up and otherwise do not create new crime threats and problems which create disinvestment, that drives job losses, that drives more people on the street. That is a race to the bottom that will never make for a sustainable city. That's why the bylaws of Johannesburg and all these other cities all have the same kind of provisions in. Same as what you're voting on now. The same provisions, not different. And why the same bylaws exist in every major city in the world. They all look the same because these common sense provisions have to be there. Otherwise, your city becomes unmanageable and unsustainable. So that's what we're voting on here today. These are reasonable and good and appropriate adjustments. And again, my compliments to the Portfolio Committee on a job very extensively done. And Chair, I think part of the confusion, Speaker, emanates from the fact that there is this misguided litany from this guy who keeps on speaking on homelessness even though he understands nothing about it. I think he was in council at one stage where he really messed up housing, but he's now with those guys with the boxing gloves. And that guy started this story about there are 12,000 homeless people and only 2,500 shelter spaces. It is incredibly superficial, reductionist and simplistic reasoning. It is indicative of a person who's never engaged with the sector and done any reasonable thought or discussion with them. Maybe speak to the sector for once, and you will realize it is never the intention to permanently house homeless people in shelters all at the same time, Speaker. That's a disgraceful idea, that people should be permanently warehoused in shelters. The shelters are a pass-through point, a midway point of a person who's moving on to reintegration with family or community or other opportunities. And that is why there will always be shelter spaces. And if you see, the city has been putting out a little infographic daily on the number of shelter beds available. There's not a night now where that figure has dipped below 50 for the last month or so. Every night there are shelter beds available because people are constantly being put through into further opportunities. The shelters are not dead ends, Councillor Dudley. And I'm glad you care about this situation. We on this side of the House do very much as well. Thank you.